Tá a fim de ver os grandes craques do futebol europeu? Tá com aquela vontade de ver um golaço? Um clássico do futebol inglês ou El Clássico espanhol? A gente tá contigo e com o Vini Júnior, o Haaland, o Mbappé e muito mais. O Disney Plus tá com tudo e o melhor futebol do mundo tá no Disney Plus. Assista futebol europeu ao vivo no Disney Plus.
Meu nome é Cairo Santos e eu sou o kicker e único brasileiro jogando na NFL. Cada chute, cada jarda conquistada, cada passo me levou para mais perto dos meus sonhos. Agora, a cada R$200 em compras com seu Visa cadastrado, você tem a chance de ficar mais perto do sonho de assistir ao Super Bowl 59. E usando o seu cartão de débito, você ainda concorre a prêmios diários de até R$1.000. Não importa o tamanho do seu sonho, dê o primeiro passo. Visa, apoiando seus passos aonde você quiser chegar.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are reacting to the San Francisco 49ers 32 to 19 point victory over the New York Jets. It was a dominant win over the New York Jets, gang green in Monday Night Football. Jordan Mason had a great game. Brock Purdy was perfectly fine. The defense was stellar, and we're going to dive into all of that, but I do want to ask you kindly to like, share, and subscribe to the show, whether it be via YouTube or the audio platforms, and let's dive into the San Francisco 49ers' first victory of the 2024 NFL season. It was a good one. It was arguably, and I think this is my biggest takeaway of this game, is that, well, yes, the offense sputtered a little bit at the beginning. There were certainly things to point to and say this needs to get better, mainly offensive production. There was some offensive line issues early. Colton McKivitz had a handful of penalties, mainly holding calls. He got beat early in the game on a third down. Jake Brendel got annihilated by Javon Kinlaw on a play early that cost San Francisco a drive. Brandon Aiyuk was not the Brandon Aiyuk we've come and known to love, but ultimately, when you look at the entire slate of NFL action, you can see the San Francisco 49ers arguably, besides the Saints destroying a terrible Panthers team and the Dallas Cowboys taking it to a really good, or supposed to be really good, Cleveland Browns team, the Niners had arguably the second or third best win of the NFL season thus far. Of the Week 1 slate, San Francisco had, I think, the second best win, third best win of the entire schedule thus far. It was a great win for them. It was a game where many people thought, hey, this could be a game where you lose. Can you put the long offseason behind you? Can you erase what had been a long, arduous, will they, won't they, with Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk? How is this team going to respond to losing the Super Bowl in week number 1 against a team like the Jets that, to many, is going to be the AFC's, Super Bowl representative? To others, at least going to be in the playoffs this year. They're playing a team that wanted to come into their home and prove the world wrong and essentially make a statement. Robert Saleh and company, Aaron Rodgers off the Achilles, he's back. San Francisco, albeit, was playing at home in their home crowd and in their home arena. The Jets definitely came in with a chip on their shoulder of like, look, we have nothing to lose. Let's go out there and let's make a statement. Let's surprise. Let's, on prime time, week 1 of the NFL season, let's go into somebody else's home and not just anybody else's home. The reigning NFC champion. Let's walk into their place and let's take it to them. And early it wasn't pretty, like I already stated, but the San Francisco 49ers didn't allow any of that to transpire on Monday Night Football. Obviously, the biggest storyline of the game last night was who was going to replace Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, it's not just a one-off of, okay, McCaffrey for Jordan Mason, how's that going to work? But it's like, how are you going to replace the reigning Offensive Player of the Year's production. In this game, it was some Deebo Samuel. In this game, it was some Juwan Jennings. Deebo getting a couple of carries out of the backfield, but it was primarily Jordan Mason. And to hit on Christian McCaffrey's injury for 1 second here before diving into the game itself, I'm kind of scared. Not that I'm scared that he's not going to play ever again or he's not going to have a great season, but whenever you hear the term Achilles tendonitis, that's scary. Because that leads to Kevin Durant, if you're an NBA fan or a Warrior fan, it leads to, okay, you can't really run without your Achilles. So hearing a running back that is arguably the most flexible, if you will, one of the most running backs that is quick movements and jukes and can get away almost from anybody, relies on the speed he has, the quick cuts. He is someone that you can put up against anybody, maybe outside of Lamar Jackson, as the best runner of the football in the entire NFL. When you don't have that player out there, and it seems like he may or may not play against the Vikings this Sunday, obviously time will tell, that's concerning, and it feels like the injury is going to be a nagging one throughout the entirety of the year. So coming into this game, it was, how can you replace Christian McCaffrey? But now even more so, I think we have an answer of how things are going to go, because Jordan Mason in this game was just on another level. Yes, San Francisco won 32-19, but for the majority of this game, it felt like Jordan Mason was winning by double digits. It felt like Jordan Mason won 32-19 for the offense. He was that good. 28 carries, 147 yards, 5.3 yards a pop, 1 touchdown. Should have been 2 touchdowns had it not been for a Deebo Samuel holding call. Even caught a pass on a third down to extend a drive. And Jordan Mason was just incredible last night. It made many fans, including myself, say, what took this so long? You look back a couple years ago, obviously Mason's a much better player now than he was, again, his rookie season or even his sophomore year, but fans have been clamoring to see more of Jordan Mason, to see what this young running back can do, and they wanted him to play over Elijah Mitchell the last couple years. They wanted to see more of J.P. Mason, and on the biggest, brightest stage, not the playoffs or the Super Bowl, on Monday Night Football, week 1 of the NFL season, where every single NFL fan has their eyes turned to that TV, Jordan Mason answered the call. And it wasn't just in relief of, a couple plays here or there. He carried the football 28 times, the most of any running back under Kyle Shanahan in Niners history. The most carries by a single running back since Frank Gore in, I think, 2013. What Jordan Mason did last night, albeit could be a one-off, time will obviously tell. I think Mason is built to be able to carry the football 15 times a game and hopefully be a 1-2 punch with Christian McCaffrey. I'm not too sold on him being the next RB1 of this roster. Obviously, he's not going to be once McCaffrey comes back, but you hope he will still get carries and touches once CMC returns in the near future. But Jordan Mason was excellent. And it wasn't just, give him the rock over and over and over again, although that was a big part of this. Jordan Mason was running with ferocity, and he was running, although sometimes into his own offensive lineman's back, he was continually falling forward. He was aggressive with his runs. He was breaking countless tackles on almost every single attempt he had, but he was also really good in picking up blitzes and in pass protection, and the hands came into play. Jordan Mason put on a full display of what you want out of a star running back. Now, let's be clear here. It's one game. We have no idea what's going to transpire in the future, but I do think that with Christian McCaffrey's injury, a lot of the concern was, okay, Elijah Mitchell's done for the year. How is Mason going to respond? Even Jordan Mason's biggest applauders and fans did not expect that. That was record-setting stuff to a point of, I think he has the 3rd most rushing yards by a Niners running back in their first ever start in the entire organization's history. Last night, you witnessed history with Jordan Mason, you witness record-setting, record-breaking performances behind the legs of Jordan Mason last night. He was stellar. I'm sure he saved a handful of your fantasy games. I myself had Christian McCaffrey starting. All of the other games had been played, so I couldn't replace CMC with Mason, but if you picked him up, or even if you drafted him, my goodness, what a foresight to have, because he was stellar. Now, obviously, it's not just Jordan Mason. You have to give a huge credit to what the offensive line did last night, and you can dive into every third down and first down, who did this and who did that, but, the offensive line for any running back, whether, would have been Christian McCaffrey or Mason or even Elijah Mitchell, Isaac Guerendo, if that offensive line's not good, you're not going to do what Jordan Mason did last night, and so you have to give credit to, obviously, Trent Williams, who played a phenomenal game, allowed no pressures last night for the first time since, 2022, excuse me. Only 3 pressures the entire night from the offensive line. One of their sacks allowed was a Deebo Samuel fake, trick play that ended up him running 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage and finding room to just only lose 3 yards. So the offensive line was great. They were taking it to a Jets defense that is really good. And it's funny, you hear Robert Saleh at halftime, or just out of halftime. Second half is beginning. I think it was Lisa Salters talking to him on the ESPN broadcast, and he said, we can turn off the faucet, meaning we can stop the run whenever we choose to. I love you, Bob. I love you, Robert, but there was no way you were stopping the run last night. Now, I don't know why in the world the thought of Solomon Thomas and Javon Kinlaw and Jefferson and Quinnen Williams were going to somehow stop the run. San Francisco saw firsthand that Javon Kinlaw is not a run defender. Solomon Thomas is not a run defender. And early on in this game, while again there were certainly bumps in a slow start for San Francisco, you can tell Shanahan early was like, are they really going to let me run the football nearly 40 times? This is a game that Kyle Shanahan dreams of. They ran the football essentially 37 times outside of a Brandon Allen, late game kneel down. I mean, man, like Robert Saleh, even the thought in his head of we can stop this whenever we want to was like, no, you can't. And there's not many teams that when the Niners offense gets rolling like it did last night, where they're running the football 37 times, they're getting 5 yards a pop. Pooney and Brendel and Banks and even McKivitz, they're opening up holes left and right for 5 yards. And take it even further. Like, the Shanahan offense utilizes their offensive linemen, and this is usually seen through Trent Williams as another weapon. That's why it's so important. You saw last year that the San Francisco 49ers, there was a drastic statistical difference in when they ran right and when they ran left. You want to know why? Because Kyle Shanahan uses Trent Williams like a weapon. Last night, the entire offensive line was a weapon for San Francisco to a point of there was utter dominance. And I think that cannot be understated, that San Francisco last night demoralized a Jets defense that wanted to make a statement that thought, hey, we were a top 10 team last year. We improved the defensive line. We have good linebackers. We have Sauce Gardner. Like, the Jets walked into last night believing we can stop San Francisco's offense. And about maybe halfway through the game, there was a clear shift of, oh my God, we are in over our heads. We have no idea how to stop this. In fact, it's so frustrating to know what the issue is, to know, hey, we have to stop this, and essentially know how to stop it, but you simply just can't stop it. That was Jordan Mason last night. That was San Francisco's offense last night, to a point of like, even if you were worried pregame, which admittedly I was, once CMC got ruled out, there were questions in the back of my mind saying, hey, can San Francisco actually pull this thing out? I walked into my bedroom. My wife was watching some Mormon reality show on Hulu. She was like, I have to watch this show. All right, great, honey. I said, but you know what? I'm worried about the Niners tonight. No CMC. How's Mason going to do the long offseason? They shut that you-know-what down real quick. And I think every Niner fan should leave last night's game not just feeling confident. Yeah, we're 1-0, tied for first place in the NFC West, but you should leave last night knowing that, well, yes, only week number 1, you demoralized, you crushed one of the best defenses in football. You took it to them on a consistent basis from quarter number 2 to the end of the game. Like, you crushed, annihilated, you mollywopped, if you will, a really good defense. You outperformed an offense that has Aaron Rodgers, albeit off a torn Achilles, that has Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Like, it was an multifaceted domination. A domination sensation, if you will. Shout out Dan Dibley. San Francisco just stood up and said, look, you may think you're David facing Goliath, but this Goliath ain't going to fall to a bunch of stones in a slingshot, brother. You're going to have to bring more to the fight if you want to win. And, there were a lot of talk of the offseason or during the offseason that, San Francisco is getting older, Trent Williams, and how long is Kittle going to hold up, and Deebo going to hold up, and yeah, you have Nick Bosa, but, that defensive line, yeah, it's Javon Hargrave, but he wasn't great last year, and you're getting older now, and San Francisco looked essentially their younger selves in the face outside Aaron Rodgers. Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall had a great year last year, Garrett Wilson had a good year last year, and a defense that has stars all over the place in the Jets, and said, age is but a number. Like, the defense, although wasn't having this amazing performance in regards to getting to Aaron Rodgers, there was some pressures in this game. I think Leonard Floyd had 4 of them. But ultimately, the story of the game is the offense. Laurie Matthews says here that they broke the Jets' defense last night. They broke their will. Shanahan was in his bag last night. And Laurie, you're right that is a game Shanahan wants to run and have every single night. I think it was 2021 where they ran the football 45 or 40 times, whatever it was, against the Rams and just crushed them. They held the ball for about 42 minutes, and it was like, holy crap. Like, you play that style of football, you're that dominant up front, you can beat anybody. That's what San Francisco did last night. Yeah, there's, again, it wasn't pretty. From the passing game side of things, there were some blunders early. You, of course, want Brandon Aiyuk to play better, but from a simple game plan standpoint, Kyle Shanahan saw that, look, they are not going to be able to control the line of scrimmage, that being the Jets, and San Francisco grabbed that thing and never let go once they finally got a hold of it. Dominic Puni was stellar last night. You go back and you watch the holes he created on the offensive line. Jordan Mason had 3 or 4 yards to move with before even being touched at times. I think it'd be wrong of me to not shout out Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, but mainly go back and watch Eric Saubert. This team has been looking for a blocking tight end really ever since Levi Toilolo in 2019. He left the next offseason to go to the Giants. Yeah, they had Charlie Warner. We all like Charlie. He's a great guy. He's a fine player. But Eric Saubert in 21 and 22 personnel last night was just phenomenal. It's not often you shout out backup blocking tight ends, but securing the edges, forcing guys back inside to allow Mason to cut back up field. Saubert was, on almost every single play, integral into getting Mason free yardage. And I think when you have that weapon, again, the offensive line, the blocking of Kyle Shanahan's offense, playing their A game, playing their A game, you're not going to lose many games. I would not be shocked if, maybe outside of the Purdy stuff, again, this to me was, one of the most or more impressive wins of the Week 1 slate, because the Lions barely escaped the Rams in overtime, and yeah, they won. The Rams were going to be a good team, young defense. That game was kind of back and forth for a long time. Obviously, it was tied late. And then, of course, Dallas just shellacked the crap out of the Browns. But, I don't look much into their Saints win over the Panthers. Panthers suck. They're going to suck all year. That's them. The Saints are going to be fine. They're probably going to be 6-11, 7-10, or whatever it may be now with the new 17 game schedule. But the Niners win last night, I think, was one of the most impressive wins of the first week of NFL action. It was that good, and mainly because Kyle Shanahan had the offensive line cooking. Of the great things you had, Jordan Mason being the main one, being the biggest story of this game, even Deebo Samuel, we've heard so much about, and we've seen up close at times during training camp and practice, that Deebo looks like 2021 Deebo again. And while last night there wasn't, these amazing plays or these big runs, Deebo did look lighter on his feet. He looked ready to go for a full 18-week and plus season. At 8 carries on the ground. He had 13 total touches. He had 77 yards altogether, had a touchdown. He had a 25-yard reception. Deebo looked like all-pro 2021 Deebo last night. And I think, they needed that as well. Yes, you need Mason to have big games, certainly helps. But when you're not going to have Christian McCaffrey, when you're not going to have a, 100% ready to go Brandon Aiyuk, you need all-pro Deebo Samuel. And I think, obviously the vibes are a big deal with them. Kyle Juszczyk talked after the game. Juszczyk talked about the vibes of, people were talking about, the vibes are off. It's the last dance. The vibes are off. He said that's completely wrong. That's incorrect. And he said anyone kind of peddling that mindset is just like, no, we are ready to go. And I think there are times, during Deebo Samuel's first couple years of his new contract, that first year overweight, looks kind of slow and sluggish. Last year, there were definitely chunks of the season where Deebo took over games. There's like a 3 or 4 game stretch where he had like 10 touchdowns, and you're like, oh my goodness, Deebo Samuel looks phenomenal again. But the injuries kind of bit him at the end of the year and during a 3-game stretch against the Vikings, Browns, and Bengals. But if Deebo is going to be healthy all year, we are talking about a player that can have a touchdown every single game. Now, it's not going to happen, obviously, but Deebo is a player that Shanahan loves to plan around offensively, and I think you can tell last night there was a point of like early in the game, let's get Deebo the football, and at times it worked, at times it didn't. That's going to be the case with the Deebo Samuel, playing the wide back position more often than not, but even then, take Jordan Mason, for example. The Jets tried to stack the box like 75% of the time, and he was still getting 5 yards a carry. He was running past linebackers and edge rushers to a point of it was like, it doesn't matter what the Jets do or did last night. There was no stopping San Francisco's offense. And again, Deebo was a big part of that. Just being himself, it felt like the more they fed Deebo, the better he got. The more that he was engaged, the more he was involved in the game plan, that he was getting a stronger burst late in the games. Or last year, it felt like at times, or even in 2 years ago, it felt like at times that Deebo late in games kind of wore down, where last night it felt like the stronger he got, the more he touched the ball, the more momentum San Francisco got. There was no stopping Deebo Samuel. And even Juwan Jennings. I think we often forget that Juwan Jennings also got a bigger payday. Deebo got his contract redone recently. Brandon Aiyuk got big money, obviously, but Juwan Jennings had himself a night last night as well. He had 5 catches, led the team in receiving yards. He had 64 receiving yards on the day, but 4 of his 5 catches were for first downs. We all know Juwan. It's 3rd and Juwan. Now, not all those first downs came on 3rd downs, but Juwan was one of the more clutch players last night, and he's so underrated because the Niners draft Ricky Pearsall and they get Jacob Cowling, right? You expect, okay, first-round receiver, middle-round receiver, they're going to have an impact this year. The odds Ricky Pearsall or Jacob Cowling have a major impact this year are slim, outside of special teams or in case someone else goes down. Juwan Jennings is so underrated to where no one really talks about him outside of San Francisco. Like, we know Juwan's good. We know Juwan plays a pivotal role on this offense as a blocker, as a clutch receiver. But Juwan just, you can tell each year he's gotten better at, the small little rate he's at, but that rate he's on is a really, really, really good number 3, and he's still a mismatch as a slot receiver. For as physical as the Jets are, you just can't stop Juwan Jennings. And Kittle wasn't a big impact player in this game, didn't need to be for that matter. You can tell early on there was an effort to help McKivitz when things got kind of shaky early, but caught a few passes. But there was a play in this game where it was after the play actually where DJ Reed, former 49er, and Juwan kind of got into it, and Juwan's dwarfing him by 3 or 4 inches here, maybe even a foot if we're being honest. It certainly felt that way. And, Reed's a feisty guy, had to fight for everything he's had in the NFL. Good for him. He's got paid big money by the Jets after being in Seattle for a year, and rightfully so. Juwan was just like, look, dude, I throw dudes into Gatorade bottles on the sideline. You are not going to punk me in my own home. In the very next play, Juwan gets a first down and lays a guy out. And it's like, that's what the Niners do. That is, by all intents and purposes, San Francisco 49er football. Like last night, if you point to the epitome of a Kyle Shanahan game, that was last night. Like San Francisco didn't need to, get out of their comfort zone for any reason last night. The Jets defense, for as good as it is, did not get San Francisco out of their box. San Francisco was comfortable. They were laying in their own bed. They were sitting there with the air purifier on, drinking a nice cup of tea, saying, this is easy all night long. The Jets, despite the roster they have, had no pushback, had no fight in them, really. And a lot of that is because of the physicality San Francisco brings. And I think if you're Robert Saleh, not that you walk back and question your defense, but it's like you do walk back and say, there is a clear level above that we are not at yet. That we're a good team. We have Aaron Rodgers and Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson and Conklin's your tight end and a fairly good offensive line last night. A bunch of veterans on it. They remade in the offseason. And a defense that you have high hopes for, but there was a clear level of play the Niners were at. It was an A+ level. The Jets were sitting at a kind of a B- if you will. And I think the Jets walk back not with their tails between their legs, but it's like, look, like we actually have a lot of work to do to get to the Niners level. And to me, that's one of the best feelings ever. It's different if you beat the Cardinals or you beat the Vikings at a great week 1, or you beat a team like the Panthers. Like, the Saints shouldn't leave that Panthers game being like, oh, we really took it to them. Like, yeah, you should have. You should have. Whereas last night, people were saying, including myself, that, wow, 23-27, it'll be 19-13, going to be, gritty and tough fought. And San Francisco was like, this is who we should be scared of? This is the team that should worry us? And not to say the Jets aren't going to be good. It's week 1. Let's not go crazy here, but it's like San Francisco had no reason, was not forced to change any of their game plans. Kyle Shanahan usually is always 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 plays ahead setting up things. It felt like last night, he was Bo Jackson from Tecmo Bowl. Just give it to Bo, that being Jordan Mason. And it was like, okay, like, if they're not going to stop you, why do anything else? But that does bring us to Brock Purdy last night, because Brock Purdy, getting a ton of flack for whatever reason. Like, was Brock Purdy great last night? No. Was he bad? No. By no means was Brock Purdy bad. You look at his box score, and it doesn't scream, oh, he was great. But Brock Purdy last night he was 19 for 29. He was 231 yards, 8 yards per attempt. He got sacked twice, whatever. Scrambled for 11 yards. It was a winnable game. Brock Purdy last night played winnable football. And I don't understand that when you watched every game this past week in the NFL, I'm sure you're like myself who was glued to that TV, watching every single game. You had the red zone on, they had the TV on. You were like, football's back, baby. I want to sink my teeth into every single snap I possibly can. There was some pretty bad quarterback play. Really bad offensive line play this week. It just, where it's like, did you guys play the preseason? Have you ever practiced before ever? And, Brock Purdy looked, of the quarterbacks that played, the 32 quarterbacks that played, he looked the most competent. Brock Purdy, he wasn't Mahomes and wasn't Lamar Jackson making flashy plays left and right, but Brock Purdy played a winnable football game, didn't turn the ball over, did what was asked of him, and the box score won't tell you this, but did even more than what Kyle Shanahan asked of him. Brock Purdy gets knocked for having all these stars on his roster, and okay, I get that. Last night, Brock Purdy, for the first time in his entire NFL career, did not have Christian McCaffrey. Never played a single game without him. Okay? They beat the New York Jets on Monday Night Football by 13 points. Could have been more. It was a garbage time touchdown by the Jets late. It was a broken offsides play because Leonard Floyd and the refs didn't call a flag. They had like 19 seconds to do so, and we're like, okay, just go ahead and let the play go. Like, the Jets' offense didn't do much in this game at all, and Brock Purdy won a game without Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy played good last night. Was there some throws you want to have back? 100%. There was that 3-play stretch of he overshoots, use check, wide open to his right on the sideline, and you're like, well, that was weird. Then he throws deep to Saubert, doesn't see the safety, almost gets picked off, and you're like, well, that was also weird. What are we doing here? And there was, again, that 3-play stretch where you're like, that doesn't feel like Brock Purdy. But then earlier in the game, he throws the most beautiful ball of the entire night, whether it was from Rodgers or from Purdy. And Rodgers had a couple of nice throws himself. He had a beautiful one over Lenore to Garrett Wilson. I think on a third down, you were like, oh, there's vintage Aaron Rodgers. That was great. I would argue Purdy's ball to Aiyuk in the back of the end zone was exactly what you're asking for from Josh Allen, from Patrick Mahomes. The difference is the receiver dropped the ball. It's like, and I think, Brandon Aiyuk, to get into him for a second, you can tell when he dropped the football, he felt, oh, crap. Everyone's going to be talking about that contract tomorrow. You can tell that the pressure of, I have to perform. He had a drop earlier in the game, although it was a nice play by Sauce Gardner, so I won't fault him too much for that, but still, had the ball in his hands, got knocked out afterwards. Doesn't usually happen to Aiyuk, but the diving catch one that he dropped, tough play for sure, but that's a play that Brandon Aiyuk makes, 7 of 10 times, and that's a play you expect him to make. He's one of the most sure-handed receivers in the entire league, and, those are plays that you have to make if you want to, be a Lombardi Trophy winner when it's all said and done. And I think, there isn't a long-term worry about Brandon Aiyuk. I think, sometimes fans get jaded because of what Deebo Samuel did his first year after his contract. He wasn't that good. Aiyuk's a different receiver. And I think, once he gets that first touchdown catch, once he kind of settles into the offense, he'll have another whole week to practice and get ready. But I got to be honest with you, I tend to agree with what Peyton Manning had to say. That, when the context of Brandon Aiyuk himself saying that I made things harder than they needed to be, and if you believe Adam Schefter, dragged things out for about an extra 19 days. Okay, when you do that, you better be ready to go. You better be crisp on every single route. You better catch every single ball to you, and that might be unfair, but that's the situation you put yourself in, Brandon Aiyuk. And he knows that. You can tell he knew that. He took his helmet off, had his head down, and said, darn. That should have been a touchdown. It really should have been. And he knows that. He knows that he was set up perfectly to catch that ball. Tough play for sure, but then Peyton Manning last night's like, you got to get your butt in there. Sign the contract, get to work. We have things to build towards, and there was a point in time in this game where, things were not heavily leaning in San Francisco's favor, and in that drive, heading into halftime, which was the drive Aiyuk dropped the ball on, it was 7-10. This game was not very close, I believe. So, it's okay. Or was 13-7, excuse me. Okay, that's a one-score game. You got to catch that ball, brother. Like, yes, you get the ball at halftime, sure. You can double up the Jets in that moment. Get a touchdown late in the first half, come out of second half, and you score a touchdown, boom. You put up 14 points against them, you've lapped them, and you've almost put this game out of hand. All that to say that, yeah, any criticism Brandon Aiyuk gets, I think, although maybe unfair, is certainly warranted. If you're going to get paid $30 million a year, you're going to hold out the entire offseason, you're going to admit to yourself, the team, and the fan base that I made things harder than they needed to be, you got to catch that ball. You should be locked in from day one. And I honestly laughed during the broadcast because they showed a video of Brandon Aiyuk, probably at his house or someone's house, maybe his trainer's house, catching a football through a tree hole like he was a 14-year-old boy practicing for his Pop Warner game of like, this will seem like a defender. And that's cool. Go back to your roots, fine. But it's like, that's not, you're an NFL player, man. Like you're getting paid $30 million. That cannot be what you're doing getting ready for the NFL season. In the next few weeks, he'll be better. But all that to say, you got to make that play the next time it happens. If it doesn't, you're going to have people like myself and more important people coming down on you. And that can mean nothing to him, but he knows it because last night you can sense, you can see, he knew I messed up. That I'm getting paid this much money, $30 million per year. I got to make plays like that. And it's nice to see a player kind of have that weight on his shoulders knowing, hey, I got to make those plays because Aiyuk's good enough. He'll make those plays. And so it's a small thing. And within that conversation of Brandon Aiyuk, the Niners last night didn't play this, perfect game. They had a dominant win for sure. Jordan Mason was excellent. The offensive line was darn near perfect. It was a great win. It was a trend-setting win to remind people who the San Francisco 49ers are and are going to continue to be if they can stay healthy. To remind them, hey, the long off season means nothing. We just took it to Aaron Rodgers, the darling of the AFC East, if you will, now at a ripe age of 40 years old. But also, we're not going to be punked by a young team on our home field. In fact, we're going to assert dominance over them at Levi Stadium in front of our home crowd. But San Francisco left plenty of plays on the field. There was one to Aiyuk, already talked about that one for sure. That was should have been touchdown play, but then Deebo gets called for holding, and Jordan Mason had an amazing run for a touchdown and gets called back, which Deebo then inevitably scores the exact same drive, which is kind of funny. But Deebo definitely owes him a nice steak, if you will, after last night's touchdown that was gifted to Deebo at the goal line. But then Deebo on the exact same drive almost fumbles that football. There was some plays early that, they had some guys open downfield. And the first couple of drives, I think they're not going to bother Shanahan. They're going to bother everybody because they know, hey, the Jets weren't scoring early, and we want to go down the field, make some plays. You get the big fumble forced by Fred Warner, who was phenomenal last night. I mean, there is nothing you cannot say about Fred Warner. Right now, it's kind of, Micah Parsons, TJ Watt, and Fred Warner as kind of your top three DPOY candidates after week one. Fred Warner was flying around, literally. We're talking leaving his feet and jumping at ball carriers. The forced fumble was huge. He was making tackles everywhere. You can make a case that Fred Warner single-handedly held Breece Hall in check the majority of the game. He was just excellent. In coverage, he was locking down tight ends. He was locking down receivers. I mean, Fred Warner, you can tell, not having Dre Greenlaw, he has taken it upon himself, by himself, to fill Greenlaw's and his own shoes. Like, Fred was just excellent last night. He's on, and it's very fitting that Patrick Willis went into the Hall of Fame this past year, or this offseason. Warner's on that track. Bowman was great, probably not going to be a Hall of Famer. Fred Warner's on that track to be the next Hall of Fame linebacker in Niner history. He's that great. And it's even to a point that I think I would take Fred Warner over Bowman. And there's going to be a conversation that when it's all said and done, Fred Warner might be the number one linebacker in Niner history. That's how good he is. There was a stat on the screen where he's the only linebacker in the NFL today that has 8+ forced fumbles and 8+ interceptions. He is a one of a kind. He is an anomaly. In a world full of Roquan Smiths, he is in a category all by himself. Fred Warner is one of one. He's a great leader. He's a great player. There's just not much more you can say about how great Fred Warner is. He is just, again, one of a kind, going to be an all-pro if he stays healthy. And without Dre Greenlaw, the middle of the field is still a no-go, no-fly zone for opposing offenses. There was some stuff in this game, though, that they definitely missed Dre Greenlaw. On the Jets' first scoring drive, the first touchdown scoring drive they had in the first half, they were screen pass, and you can tell that DFF is not fit to cover those like Dre Greenlaw. Devondre Campbell, not fit to cover those, doesn't have the speed like Dre Greenlaw. And I think, that's definitely an area to watch for in the future. I think the Rams, who aren't going to have Puka Nacua in 2 weeks, once they play later in the year, even the Cardinals, once San Francisco plays the Cardinals early this season, I would not be shocked if James Conner, who has already burned this team a couple years ago, the screen game I think is one to watch against San Francisco, because there was a point in time that it burned them almost an entire drive. It opened up lanes for the Jets offense, but that almost brings me back to my other point of, the defense made adjustments. Whereas last year kind of felt like the defense was like, nope, we're going to stick to what we do. We're not going to change much. We're going to call it zero blitzes, and we're going to get aggressive rather than change our scheme, change the game plan, make these adjustments, to a point of, you have Logan Ryan playing nickel in the Super Bowl, which worked for a half, but then once the Chiefs made adjustments, there wasn't an answer by Steve Wilks, which got him fired against the Vikings a couple years ago, or last year, where they lost on primetime Monday Night Football. There wasn't a response from Steve Wilks. Nick Sorensen last night had a phenomenal debut. It's one game, let's not get too crazy, right? But, you sack Aaron Rodgers once. The pressure wasn't exactly there, but the defense made adjustments. The secondary was attacking left and right. Malik Collins last night made a statement. Malik Collins was awesome last night. You can tell they put money into improving the run defense. He was everywhere early in this game. Again, the Jets wanted to walk in, get momentum early, run the ball with Breece Hall, attack what is supposed to be San Francisco's weakness, which it was all last year. The last time San Francisco's defensive line looked this good was the Jaguars game post-bye week last year when they pulled Steve Wilks out of the booth onto the sideline. Nick Sorensen isn't a loud guy, not a raw guy like Saleh or DeMeco Ryans is, but Nick Sorensen made the adjustments. Nick Sorensen put his guys continually in positions to succeed. He trusted his guys. Again, Malik Collins was phenomenal, stopping Breece Hall early to almost make the Jets one-dimensional and make them have to go to the screen passes, to make them have to try something else. It's always a great thing for a defense when you can stop the opposing offense's game plan coming into a game and make them change first. Malik Collins and Fred Warner were a massive part in making the Jets go to that screen game, go to a more pass-heavy offense for a little bit of time. Then San Francisco then readjusted to that with Lenoir playing great. Mooney Ward was locked down all night, a 49.7 coverage grade, a 49.7 passer rating allowed, an 80.7 coverage grade. He was phenomenal. He locked down the entire right side of the defense to a point of, go back and watch or go look up Aaron Rodgers' pass chart. It's left, left, left. Like 90% of his throws are towards Isaac Yiadom, who, when you're getting targeted that much, held up great. Like, the Niners defense did not blink at all. And the offense timing is usually an issue, and there certainly was those things. I don't think you can point to the defense as like they have these catastrophic holes. In fact, anything San Francisco may have, struggled with last night, it's not one of those things that you go, that's going to be a problem in week 16, week 15. Come playoff time, that's not going to be great. Where a lot of teams, the Bears, for example, the Titans' offensive line was terrible. The Rams have a handful of injuries on the offensive line now. The Lions, there are things you point to and go, that's not, that's going to be a problem. The Bengals defense was terrible. And it's like the Niners were like, everything we did essentially worked. Nothing that may have been an issue is going to linger or should linger. It's not, you don't point to it and say, that's going to be a season-long issue that could hinder them from winning big games. And winning this game, and I think this is, one of the most important takeaways from this game. It's early in the season. Let's not get too crazy, right? But like Eric Wallace says here, from a Seahawks fan, great win last night. Good win to you as well, Eric. Hope you're still watching. But Seattle won their game. Niners won their game. The Rams lost against the Lions. The Cardinals lost against the Bills, which you now are up a game on the Rams. You should be able to beat the Vikings. And again, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but then you have the Rams in week 3. There is a real possibility if San Francisco continues to win that you are now up 2 games over the Rams, who are supposed to be your biggest competitor in the NFC West. That's a massive win last night. You capitalize on playing Monday Night Football, you get more rest, your star player didn't even play, and you get up a game on supposed to be your biggest competitor in your own division. It's week 1, but every game matters. We have seen the last few years, even dating back to 2021, where San Francisco squeaked into the playoffs against the Rams last week of the year, overtime victory. They had to have that game. Even last year, 1 game separated you from the Lions and the number 1 seed. Like, each game matters. Winning that game last night, yes, you had to win. It's week 1, but you get a game up on the Rams. You play them in 2 weeks. If you beat the Vikings and you beat the Rams, then you're up 2 games on them. You're in a really good spot to continue to separate yourself in your own division. But even then, going further into that, it's like you win last night. You feel pretty good about yourself. You have a short week now, but the vibes are good. Everyone's feeling high. You now believe Jordan Mason can actually be something for you if Christian McCaffrey is going to miss an extended period of time. Your defense played great. Deebo Lenoir last night was just stellar. I think if you point to a player in the secondary that, besides Mooney Ward, was just MVP level stuff, Lenoir was just great. I mean, his handle, I think, on Instagram is Himothy the hyena. You were definitely Himothy last night, Lenore. The phenomenal PBU on Garrett Wilson to knock the ball off up in the air for the DFF interception. He made a great tackle inside the trenches on a Breece Hall 2-point conversion. I mean, they were tackling all night in the secondary, in the second level of the defense. Lenore essentially locked down Garrett Wilson for the most part of this night. You know, people don't really understand that Garrett Wilson has 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with Zach Wilson and a load of garbage as his quarterbacks. You give that man Aaron Rodgers, you should be a 1,300-yard receiver, a 1,400-yard receiver. Lenore last night in coverage against Garrett Wilson was excellent. 38 yards allowed on 6 targets. Basically 5.6 yards per attempt. That's great. He forced an interception. San Francisco won the turnover battle. They're already up 2-0. A forced fumble, a pick. I mean, for all the questions people had, for all the worries people had, not that San Francisco put them to bed last night, but the San Francisco 49ers are going to be one of the best teams in football once again. They may not win it all. That's the NFL, right? But they are still going to be known as the top dog or a top dog in the entire NFL. You can even argue that their win against the Jets last night was more impressive than the win against the Ravens that the Chiefs had. Now, I won't go that far, but you can certainly make the argument for that. And if you want to be an overreaction week 1 guy, which by all means go ahead, Chiefs-Niners, you want to do it a third time? I mean, they looked like the best 2 teams in football as they should have. The Niners are still, I don't know why there was this narrative of, oh, they're not going to be as good, going to be a letdown, and sure, it's week 1, but in week 1, San Francisco looked like the exact same team they were when last year ended with a better run defense. And Brock Purdy wasn't even on his best game. There were precise passes on third down, sure. He extended some drives, but there still was some plays left out there that you're like, okay, like, you got to convert those. Even Kyle Shanahan last night, there was some befuddling play calling. I don't know why you would call a trick play on 3rd and 5 on your opponent's or inside your opponent's 30-yard line. Why? It's 3rd and 5. You have Jordan Mason, who having a great game. You have Deebo Samuel. You have Kittle and Brock Purdy and Brandon Aiyuk. Why call trick plays, which seem to be the per dog play, where Brock Purdy's the wide receiver and Deebo Samuel's the quarterback? Good on the Jets for playing that well, but it's like, if you're going to nitpick anything, I'd nitpick Kyle Shanahan last night on just 2 plays. You don't go, you on 3rd and 5, you call a trick play, which like, what are we doing here? But then later in the game, it's 4th and 1. The Jets just scored a touchdown, gave them the 13 points they had, I believe. And you okay? Like, the Jets have seemingly found some momentum. They're trying to fight, but your offense has marched all the way down to about their 2-yard line, and it's 4th and 1. You don't go for it. That's not the same Kyle Shanahan that in the preseason let Joshua Dobbs go for a read option on 4th and 1 against the Saints in the exact same situation before halftime. I don't know why that was the case, and if you want to call it egregious, I wouldn't go that far, but it's like there are times you want Kyle to kind of open up the inner Dan Campbell in himself. He is, if there is going to be a coach that should be the most aggressive play caller in the NFL, it is Kyle Shanahan. Yet sometimes he feels like the most conservative play caller in the entire league, and you're like, if anyone should let the reins loose and go nuts, it's you, Kyle. And Kyle's like, nope, play it safe. You can tell he grew up watching football in the 1980s and 90s where you're like, take the points and move on, which Jake Moody last night gave him every reason to take those points, but you kind of want a little more. Like, Kyle, you can take chances. I get it. Take the points, go down, score some more, and that's fine. I totally understand that, but it's like, get aggressive, Kyle. You had the weapons to do so. I bet that had CMC played last night, Kyle Shanahan does go for that 4th and 1. They probably score a touchdown there, but still, Jordan Mason was having himself a Christian McCaffrey type of game to a point of, did anybody really miss Christian McCaffrey last night? Of course we do, but Jordan Mason made everybody say, okay, I mean, CMC or not, they're going to win games like this a lot, even if Jordan Mason's your RB1. But again, going back to Jake Moody for a hot second, I mean, Jake Moody, 6 for 6, 100% from field goal last night, had a 51-yarder and a 53-yarder. I mean, he was stellar. He, in fact, cost me a fantasy football game last night. I had Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Jake Moody outscored both of them. I was not happy in regards to losing that game, but by all means, Jake Moody, coming into a year where, last year wasn't that great, 3rd round pick, 3rd highest kicker taken since 2004. How is this year going to go? He's been great so far. Preseason was good. I don't think he missed one kick, and if he did, it wasn't that big of a deal. Just squeaked that 51-yarder in, but I mean, for the most part, Jake Moody was house money. He's tied for the most kicks ever in Niners history in a single season game with Robbie Golden, a bunch of old dudes I'd never heard of, but Jake Moody out here tying records. He's excellent. He was excellent last night. 1 of 2 kickers to make 6 field goals. And the field goal stuff, you do want to turn those into touchdowns. Let's not get too crazy here. You want Jake Moody kicking 2 field goals a game, not 6. You want 4 of those drives to become touchdown drives. And, you want to turn a forced fumble in Jets territory into a touchdown. Like, those things have to happen. That's what cost you the Super Bowl last year. Jair Brown gets the pick off Mahomes, right out of halftime. You don't score. You have to score on turnovers, especially in opponent's territory. So, again, there are things to work on. You do want to take Jake Moody's 6 field goals and make them 2 field goals to score more touchdowns. But, I mean, there is a realistic possibility last night that had San Francisco been playing their A-plus game, their, 42-19 game against the Eagles last year, or their 42-10 game against the Dallas Cowboys last year, that they put up 40-plus points against the Jets last night. That's what we're talking about here. That's where we're at right now. The Niners were great, and that wasn't even their best. And there really isn't much to be concerned about. The BA stuff, it'll figure itself out, hopefully, fingers crossed. But the run defense was much improved. Breece Hall is a good running back. I'm not talking, he's fine. No, he's a good running back to a point of, the expectation is he'll be a CMC light in the AFC. He's a pass catcher. He's a runner. He should have over 1,000 yards and 10-plus touchdowns. We're talking like a top 5, top 10 guy in the league last night. And the Jets, with Breece Hall, continued to run the football 16 times for just 54 yards and 3.4 yards a pop. San Francisco last night allowed 3.6 yards on the ground. That's stellar. That's a massive improvement from last year, which the run defense last year was a liability. Armstead, Hargrave, Kinlaw last year, Givens, they were getting pushed around. Last night, San Francisco's defensive line just had their feet in that dirt. They were not moving. I mean, the longest run last night for the Jets was 16 yards. That's not that big. Go back to San Francisco. Their longest run, 24 yards. Second longest run, 11 yards. Kittle had a 26-yard catch. Juszczyk, a 34-yard catch, which was great. Deebo, 25 yards. Jennings, 22 yards. Like, San Francisco nearly had the 7 top longest plays in this game had it not been for a Breece Hall 16-yard touchdown run, 16-yard run and a 36-yard touchdown pass on a broken play to Allen Lazard. San Francisco was utterly dominant. And this is who they are. This is exactly who San Francisco was last year. It's who they are this year. And through one game, they look better on defense. The defense outperformed the offense, and the offense had Jordan Mason having a career night. They beat the Jets so bad, they benched Aaron Rodgers and said, throw the towel in, enough's enough. And then Tyrod Taylor led them to a touchdown drive, which on that exact drive, Mooney Ward dropped an INT right to him. San Francisco could have had 3 takeaways last night, could have put up 45 points last night. And yes, shoulda, coulda, woulda, those things had to get cleaned up. But what a great week 1. You can tell for Trent Williams, Brandon Aiyuk, it was their first games. This was the ramp-up game for them. This is a great game for San Francisco. Everyone should feel good. From Brock Purdy to Jordan Mason, obviously. George Kittle was okay last night. He's pretty good. Kyle Juszczyk was good last night. When your fullback is catching the ball 34 yards downfield, you're not going to beat that team. You're not going to beat that team. He was wide open. Kyle was in that bag of tricks almost all night long. Almost all night long. And when you get Kyle in his bag with the offensive line work last night, San Francisco is going to be a hard team to beat, which was the expectation, but sometimes you just need that reminder. You go through a long offseason, sometimes you just want them to prove it to you again. And last night, San Francisco proved it to not just me or you, but the entire world that, hey, we're not going anywhere, and that wasn't even our best. It is yet to come. Sunday, Vikings, 10 a.m., that's another point. Vikings kicked the you-know-what out of the Giants on Sunday. It was ugly. Sam Darnold, Sammy D's out there slinging the rock left and right. He was almost perfect. Go beat them too. Go slow down Jay Jettas, Sam Darnold. You knock them around. Then you come back to California and knock the Rams around. Last night wasn't just important to get the win and gain a game on the Rams. It was, you win last night, probably your toughest game until week 7 against the Chiefs. You got the Vikings, the Rams, the Cardinals, Patriots. There's a real possibility here we're talking 5-6-0 again. That's why last night was so important. And when you win the way San Francisco did last night against the Jets, in the fashion in which they won, which was just domination from, second half and on, that's scary for every other team in the NFL. Scary. San Francisco put the NFL on notice, and they didn't even have to. It was hey, don't forget about us. The offseason wasn't flashy. It was kind of annoying, but we're the exact same team we were last year. We are going absolutely nowhere. And our best player didn't even play. That's how good San Francisco was last night. But tell me down below what you thought of the win. How do you feel? You feeling great? How do you feel about the offensive line? John Neville says here, Pooney was punishing, or in his case, punishing people last night. He was. How do you feel about the offensive line? What are your biggest takeaways from the win last night? Put that down below in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channels and the audio podcasting platforms. Give us a 5-star review. And if you kindly could, follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And if you want to watch the San Francisco 49ers play this year, whether at home or on the road, whoever you want to see it all, any NFL game, any concert, maybe it's a baseball game, doesn't matter what it is. Go find your tickets on SeatGeek.com. put in the promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And if you are tired of having to search through countless websites, surf through countless YouTube videos like this one to find the news about your favorite team you've been looking for, go to sportsspider.com. They organize articles, podcasts, videos, everything you need to stay up to date on your favorite teams. They put it all in one place just for you. Hit that link down below in the description or go to sportsspider.com and find all the latest news of your favorite team in all one spot. And if you love playing fantasy football, do I got something special for you? We have partnered with Locker to start a fantasy football league. It's a $15 buy-in with an escalating jackpot of $450 being the starting price. It starts there. Once we get 30 people in that league, it goes up and up and up and up as high as your heart can possibly desire. Let's play fantasy football this year by joining my Locker League down below in the description. Anyone can join. $15 buy-in. Let's earn you some money. And heck, it's a top 3 winners that get the money. So all you gotta do is finish top 3. Let's get you some money while you watch your favorite teams play the sport you love. My name is Sterling Bennett. If you already haven't, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you to Bobo, John Nevels, Lori Matthews, Eric Wallace, Rick Martinez, and Raphael5629ers saying what's up, and like and subscribe to everyone. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And as always, until next time, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.